All right, we are live. Hello, welcome to the first episode of Ring Takes, the podcast where we talk about wrestling in combat sports. But tonight we're talking about wrestling, and I'm joined by two very good friends of mine, Brian and Lewis. Two guys that I went to. We love wrestling. Uh, we talk wrestling, and let's just get into it. Basically, again, thank you guys for joining me. First of all, especially on short notice because this was put together for the past couple of weeks a little bit, and you guys jumped on and you guys are available. So again, thank you guys for joining me, of course. But of course, we're brought here because of wrestling. The road to WrestleMania is happening. A lot of things, a lot of changeover in WWE, AEW, all these wrestling promotions that we kind of keep pulse on, keep a tabs on, check in on. And basically, let's just give a little small introduction into how we got into wrestling. Either one of you guys can go.
All right, Luz, you can go ahead and go first.
No lie, I was actually thinking about this, and I think I honestly got into wrestling through the video games, like the ones on PlayStation, like the SmackDown games. Because one of my boys lived in Hyde Park, and I used to go to his house after school, and I remember he had it, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And I was like, "Yo, this is wrestling," and I was like, and then I checked it out, and I was hooked. Yeah, but I mean, I haven't been watching it nonstop. Yeah, I haven't been watching it nonstop since, it took a couple breaks here and there, but been watching it more consistently now, when I can.
Yep.
Yeah, so I actually got into wrestling in I think it was like 97, 98. So originally my older brother and my god brother, they were into it first. They had their friends that they would watch pay-per-view at each other's houses. And I remember, my earliest memory was I forget what pay-per-view it was, but you guys remember Sunday Night Heat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So during it was a pre-show before. I think The Rock was in the ring cutting the promo, and then Undertaker was on the Titantron, and then something happened, and then something in the arena caught on fire for the Undertaker. So I specifically remember being scared. And anytime the Undertaker came out or anything, I specifically remember my god brother saying, "Yo, we gotta turn the lights off because it's not the same if the lights are on." So every time the Undertaker came out, he always had to turn the lights off.
Yeah. No, that's probably when Undertaker was definitely in his evil ministry phase.
The ministry of darkness,
worship.
That shit was fire though. Those promos, the vignette.
He definitely had in my opinion, he definitely had the best Undertaker theme
song. That ministry time, I was like, yo. Yeah, facts. So basically how I got into wrestling, my family, we all recorded all the papers. I had the VHS tapes. We had everything stacked, like WrestleManias, King of the Rings, anything. But the one that brought me to the dance of wrestling was basically SummerSlam 97. I vividly remember my mom gave me the buzz cut, and the buzz cut, cleaned up, got some food, sat down, and the first memory I remember is the blue cage and Triple H versus Mankind. Mankind rips open his shirt, jumps off the top rope, hits the elbow drop, all that. So he wins that match. That's a memorable time. And of course, especially in the summertime, my mom, over the course of the school year, wouldn't let me stay up. So anytime during the summertime where I can stay up and watch a pay-per-view, that stood out. So I always remember that. Of course, Austin breaking his neck, Owen Hart breaking Austin's neck, the whole Bret Hart versus Undertaker, Shawn Michaels hitting him with the chair, all that. So SummerSlam 97, I still remember it was on the VHS tape with the yellow sticker on it. SummerSlam 97. That's my first introduction into wrestling. My first vivid memory of wrestling. Of course, I saw all the old stuff growing up, had the action figures and stuff, but that was the one thing that stood out to me, that pay-per-view. So SummerSlam 97 is it for me. Moving on, let's get into who's our favorite wrestlers. Of course, there's a lot of history here. Who's our favorite wrestler? I'll go first. My favorite wrestler is probably Kurt Angle. Of course, The Rock was there for a little bit. Undertaker's respected, but in terms of just the person who was top notch, I thought he was a little bit better than Chris Benoit. very entertaining, very funny. Kurt Angle, his technical ability, even when he left WWE and went to TNA, that was the only reason why I even watched TNA. Kurt Angle going to TNA and putting on those performances with Samoa Joe and AJ Styles and all that, like he gave them notoriety that they didn't have. So Kurt Angle has to be it for me. Just entertaining wise, of course, we all remember King of the Ring when he's throwing Shane McMahon through the glass, all that stuff. The way he came into the company and stuff like that, just like he was different, weird, a dork, basically. And then you just realized he was a badass after like all the performances that he was putting in. He was able to switch up and be comedic, be funny, and I just love his wrestling. I watch his wrestling. Like I just watched Undertaker versus him at No Way Out, 06. Like that was actually supposed to be at WrestleMania, and they pushed it up to No Way Out. So yeah, Kurt Angle for me.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. I still don't think Kurt Angle gets his due for everything he's done in wrestling. I mean, I remember one time my brother wanted me to put together a top 10 list, and I think I had Kurt Angle at like 9, and he was like, Kurt Angle shouldn't even be on the list. And I was like, you serious? We're talking Kurt Angle. What is Kurt Angle we talking about? You take me forever to list all those
when it was like his SmackDown run with Benoit and Edge and putting all those matches up, building SmackDown. Yeah. It's like I can't forget those matches. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's funny. As much as I actually watched a lot of curling, I saw all the stuff with Benoit, the shaving of the heads when he stole his gold medal, was hiding it in his drawers and all that stuff.
Yep.
I remember those vividly. I remember watching those and I'm like, yo, this is crazy. But it is, I don't know. I guess I can see how people forget about Kurt Angle a little bit, but it's like he's legit had feuds with like everybody, all the top guys, and like you know, he went heel or babyface. And his athletic ability, especially early on, was crazy. Like that man's German suplex was top tier.
Like the feud with Brock Lesnar, like that was like
exactly.
They had an Iron Man match on SmackDown, like regular TV hour match. Like that's crazy. That's crazy.
Those middle school days. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, but as far as what my favorite wrestler is, I got a lot of favorites. I mean, I've always been a Rock guy, but if I could go back, the first guy I was a fan of was Chris Jericho, and I remember specifically, Jericho, yeah. And I'm even following him now in AEW. I mean, actually, the only reason I only watch AEW is because of Chris Jericho. But his charisma, his debut, going head to head with The Rock. I mean, nobody did that. I mean, if you went head to head with
The Rock, that's WWF. That's WWF Chris Jericho. That's not like WCW.
Yeah.
WWF Chris Jericho. So that's
like
because I was maybe
WCW
like 2 years
Chris
into
Jericho to me kind of laid that ground.
Yeah.
Like didn't watch much of WCW, but I did see enough documentaries and everything to see that WCW Chris Jericho, the feud with Goldberg, calling them out, the whole list of moves with the feud with Dean Malenko,
listing all the moves.
Like he was an idiot.
Yeah.
But then WWF, when he became becoming undisputed champion, and you know, only guy to beat Rock and Stone Cold in one night, and like every time he came out with his entrance, I remember standing up and doing it too, and
that countdown to the millennium, it has to be one of the best debuts, at least in my book.
Yeah.
Like
I'm mad they don't
especially
do
with
that no more. Like those little Titantron things.
Yeah, his 3D, the thing with the ball was like so ahead of his time. You're like, yo, what is this? This is crazy. His intro was like a spectacle.
But definitely Chris Jericho.
Yeah, Chris Jericho he's definitely one of my favorites right now, just because the dude has been around for so long and he's still going.
Yeah.
For me, you know, funny enough, probably the one wrestler who stood up first to me was Kane. And mind you, this dude, masked, never said anything for the longest time, but just because he was connected to Undertaker, I thought he was fucking amazing. And I always wanted him to win the title. And I was mad that did he win the title with the mask or did he win it afterwards?
Yeah, yep. He had the first
I
blood
think it was
match.
afterwards. I always wanted him to win it like with the mask. I'm like, dude, he doesn't even say shit.
One night.
But he was just fucking massive. But my favorite wrestler obviously is Eddie Guerrero.
Got the shirt on. Okay.
Eddie Guerrero. Kane was the first one that caught my eye, but the favorite of all time is Eddie. Eddie was, and mind you, like it's not even just his Spanish. It was just like his attitude, the style, the wrestling, everything, and like the story that he had with Ray and Benoit and everybody. When he finally won the title, that was like, I was like, he did it. That stood out to me for the longest time.
Especially just like talking about Kane and first off and stuff like that. He doesn't get his just due, even though like he's had a long career, of course, and stuff like that. Of course, I thought he should have won. Like this is just me. When he in 2001, when he changed up his look, I thought he should have won the Rumble then, and because I thought Kane was the beast for the company overall during that time, especially the battles with Triple H and stuff like that. But I just felt like he was such a monster and a different. Of course, he's Undertaker or Jace, right? Like he's Undertaker's brother. They're the same size, same moveset, all that, right? Yep. But the way he played it and the way he was so demon, like badass, like the red entrance when he came in, the red lights, like everything, the fire, like that's a presentation that you wanted.
Fire was the best thing going. I was like, yo, someone could easily like die just from his like.
It scared Brian into becoming a fan. Fire does it, man. Fire does it.
Yo.
Nah, but just speaking on Eddie Guerrero, seeing him in WCW, his battles with Ray, how he battled up. He was the under guy, especially against Brock Lesnar. He was the little guy against Brock Lesnar, and the way he did that, his performances, his technical ability, his charisma, of course, being funny, the lie, cheat, and steal. Like, I love that guy. Love Eddie.
Yeah, and you mentioned his feud with Rey Mysterio, and I just want to say that there are not a lot of matches in the 90s that could still stand till today compared to the wrestling you see. That match at Halloween Havoc with Rey Mysterio, that will always stand the test of time. Like I always have to go back and watch that because
especially because like you're not even a fan. You wasn't even a WCW guy.
Yeah,
but that's a WCW match that you always go back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Watch. And that's what put like cruiserweights on the map too, because back then it was all you just had to be big. If you were small, you wasn't going nowhere. You were just a jobber or whatever.
Like looking back on wrestling, literally that's how guys got time. Like you just had to be big. Like I was watching some of those old Royal Rumbles. I'm like, this guy can't wrestle. He's just big.
Bro.
They had like 15 guys that size.
That's why I was never like a Hulk Hogan fan. I didn't know much about Ultimate Warrior. I mean, these guys put in work. They were fucking huge. They were jacked. But when I think back to the older days, the ones that honestly stood out for me was like Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker. Just starting off his thing was crazy. Jake the Snake as well. But like I was never a Hulk Hogan guy. I was like,
I get killed for not being a Hogan fan. I always trash Hogan.
I don't like Hogan whatsoever.
I mean, like when it comes to Hulk Hogan, obviously he is the 80s. He is the 80s of wrestling. But that's obviously that's how he was promoted. It had a lot to do with it. But like. I mean, back then, you just had to look the part. You didn't really need you had to have something, but nothing crazy. So he looked the part. He had the catchphrases, and he was just the perfect.
Let's give him
the Hulkamaniac.
Company. He was that guy during that time. Put in work, never missed a day, all that stuff. But in terms of watching wrestling, I'm like, nah.
I can't watch that today.
I always say Macho Man was better. Like Randy Savage was better. Like. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, like all these other guys that can actually do stuff. And that's the thing, because even when Randy got big, he can still wrestle. Hogan is just like, he's not one of my favorites. I respect him. we'll get into that to another time, of course, I'm pretty sure at some point, but it's just like Hogan did what he needed to do during that time. And it was just like the way he was able to still stay consistent and especially going to WCW, kudos for him for doing that. Of course, he got paid.
Yeah.
But kudos for him for even doing that. That changed the trajectory of wrestling again. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Can't stand him, but gotta respect. I respect him. I trash Hogan. Like he's boring. He don't got the greatest matches. Of course, he was Andre the Giant. Of course, whatever the case may be. But in terms of his career, I'm just like, I can't do it. I respect him for doing what he did, but it's just like I can't. In terms of best wrestlers, I can't do that.
No.
I like that. I liked Vader from back in the day just because he was on Boy Meets World. It's Vader time.
Facts. Wow, like
that to me was like the best crossover right there because I loved Boy Meets World, and then I was like, "Yo, it's Vader."
Like Vader was badass. Like I remember, when I was little. He had the little thing that blew out smoke.
Yeah, the fucking
little kid, like watching that shit, like he was badass, just totally badass, and just tough as nails. And he was like, unfortunately, when he got to WWF, it was just like they didn't put him over.
Yeah,
they never put him over. Like,
man was doing moonsaults. Like, come on.
I mean, that was Shawn Michaels, but I mean, he should have got some type of just doing WWF. But he was a monster in WCW. I've seen some of his Japan stuff where he's doing gnarly stuff, like crazy shit. But Vader was awesome too. Macho Man, of course.
Yeah,
another guy who I'm trying to think of.
Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah, Ricky Steamboat. Like I watch his old shit with Flair and stuff like that. Like the work he put in.
And definitely Flair. Flair was.
Flair. People hate Ric
Flair. If I think of good wrestlers back in the day, Flair is definitely up there.
Like people hate Flair because I'm like. They were like, he wasn't good. I'm like, yo, that's his whole stick, getting his ass kicked.
Who said Ric Flair wasn't good? Like,
I know.
Some people say it to me. And I'm just like, you know,
realistic to me, for the best wrestler of all time, you can only name two people. That's him and Shawn Michaels.
Yeah. People name those two, and I'm just like I don't know how people hate Flair, like especially his workhorse as like the Four Horsemen and being a heel and stuff like that. I'm like, that was his stick to get his ass kicked. Like people paid to want to see him lose.
Exactly.
Talk about long-term heel. That man was like the perfect heel. Like till this day, he could still be a heel.
I remember in WCW, like he tried to like people thought he was turning face with Sting. So he came out to the match to help Sting, right? And he's in his slacks. Sting tags him in. He runs the ropes and then turns around and punches Sting, and they just jump him. I'm like, yo, that was like what 94 or some shit like that. I'm like, he was still able to do that. Like that's crazy. Man, like how he was able to play that. Like people don't do that today.
Yeah, Ric Flair always used to have me in tears or randomly running the ropes, doing random elbow drops onto his jacket.
Yeah.
Crazy old man.
My brother would be walking.
And when he had that long hair, it was just like the theatrics, just like, I'm messing with this fucking guy. Like, yo. The Rolex, everything. Yo. Perfect.
Especially as a kid, like, you know, thinking those lifestyles are real and stuff like that. And all this stuff. It's like, yo, when he spoke, you believed it. Like he had the attire, he had the shoes, he had the watches, he had the shades. Like he played the part.
Custom robes, all that shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he lived the
character.
Like he is the character now. Like he said in his documentary, he doesn't even know who Richard Flair is anymore. He's just Ric Flair.
Yeah,
man. Totally transcended.